I understand you guys are all from the Bay Area, and I think the majority of you all live in Oakland right now. Is that correct?
Mostly.
Mostly? Okay. So I was actually curious now because, you know, I've never been out to California, but I understand there's a big gay community out there as well. But I'm curious now to see how things have changed from when you guys had started growing up in the area, and then started playing music, and then having to see how the evolution of people's perception of the gay community and people's perception of just accepting and being able to respect each other's uh, sexual preferences or whatever the case may be, and how you felt like now things have gotten for you. I wonder if you feel like things have gotten better, have gotten a lot more looser, or if you feel like there's the tension still out there, but then you feel like this slowly but surely it's starting to get much more better for everyone involved. Especially when you guys are playing music, and I'm assuming that with the music you guys are playing, you're also opening up a lot of other people's eyes and becoming more aware that some may not realize that there's a gay punk band out there that they may assume to be associated with something else rather than a specific style of music that they may associate with someone who is gay, but failing to realize there've been a lot of gay rock stars out there like Rob Halford from Judas Priest, Freddie Mercury, of course, from Queen, but specifically for a group like for a punk genre group, I'm wondering if you guys have feel that there has been a major change that you think have gone for the better, or still a work in progress that you think that may still take a long time before people have learned to accept things as they are, rather than having to have these judgments about what they disagree on the lifestyle, if you will. I hope that's not too much a long question to start off with.
Whoa.
I would say that from a punk rock standpoint, there have always been, like, queerness has always been a component of punk rock, at least in the United States. So like bands like the Dicks,
right,
or Darby Crash from the Germs. There's always been queer musicians. Queers have always been like a pivotal part of the punk rock scene. But it wasn't until bands like Pansy Division and Tribe 8, and I'm trying to think of the band that Lynn Ma was in prior to Scrunchy Faction.
Yeah.
Is that
Cypher in the Snow was around the same time too? I don't know.
Cypher in the Snow was a little bit after Tribe 8. There was sort of like this.
Anti-Scrunchy.
What, Anti-Scrunchy?
Yeah.
Okay. Anti-Scrunchy.
Now
I
I'm
always
gonna
botched
get-
that
I'm gonna get
name.
roasted for this.
And they were in like Colorado, I think. Right? Anyway, I digress. But it wasn't until like the early 90s, early mid 90s, when it just sort of became a more pointed thing of like, this is queer rock, like this is queer punk.
Okay.
But there's always been queer musicians in punk rock.
And it's always been marginalized.
Right. And I was going to ask you about that too, because again, see, when I was growing up as a kid, I didn't, when I started getting to more punk rock music, I started becoming more aware that there is a bigger world out there, but that are, I guess it can be considered subgenres. But the thing that I just did not really understand is that how far back the that people from different backgrounds playing playing punk rock music, or not just punk rock music in general. I'm just talking about just different variety of type of music that I have as a kid growing up have been associating only with, in this case, forgive me for saying like this, but for straight people. So as I got older, more and more I started realizing that there is a bigger community out there that play music that most people, I would say conservative people, wherever the background may be, that would only associate that style of music for bands that are not for people who are gay to be playing that style of music. Because it sounds ignorant for me to say, because I think I have been very ignorant to that, which is why I was telling you I wanted to speak with you guys, because I've started to realize that there's a lot of things that I have come to learn that I'm not as well educated as I should be in understanding the vast majority of artists out there that have all these different walks of life that are playing together. But I'm just surprised that I never knew that from early on, because being around that with a lot of people who have played that was something I'd never seen growing up as a kid. So do you feel like, though, now that it has, at least at this point for you all, because I hope I don't mind repeating the question again, but that it's gotten easier for people to be more accepting that, oh, this is just a band, but they just happen to be gay, rather than that's a gay band, if that makes any sense?
Like, I feel like Bikini Kill really turned the corner of bringing queercore, the subgenre, into the forefront of acceptability to a larger degree. Would anybody agree with that?
Well, I mean, didn't Green Day take Pansy Vision on tour?
That's
And
true.
Green Day was huge, and they took
Yeah.
this queer punk band on tour to open for them. So that was like bringing it.
Green Day
Partly
took-
isn't intentional. Like,
Yeah,
Absolutely.
let's bring it to
intentional.
the forefront.
New
Yeah.
mainstream.
Okay.
In 1998, I went to the Oakland Coliseum and saw Green Day in the big arena,
That's
and
huge.
there's this queercore band opening for them, and I'm like, that is great. Like, they are doing this thing intentionally to like shine the light on. I mean, queerness has been involved in music, of course,
Right.
in the beginning of music on some level, as well as film and television and
Right.
all of that.
I think there's also like it's one, both things can be true at the same time, right? Like we're a queer band, we play as a queer band, and other queer bands also, and like sometimes like at gas stations on tour, that's an issue. And sometimes a show or politics are an issue, and sometimes like I'm not going to take off my shirt at the show because like it's doesn't always seem like it's necessarily going to go well. But I feel like most of the time, like the shows that we were organized and play, like I don't go into it being like, yeah, we're like, I mean, we're usually not even like, we're not usually the only queer band, etc. And at the same time, like, you know, what legislation was passed last week, like, not to date this, but, you know, making it illegal to like talk about
Yeah.
orientation in schools. And like, you know, there's like an ongoing and organized onslaught against the existence of trans people in this country, as well as for sure, you know, but I think, you know, it would probably be too simplistic to say that it, like, I'll say that there are also a lot of reasons that like, there can be a like centering of, or it's, you know, when you're like, why didn't I hear about this as a kid? Like, well, like there's a lot that puts forth like, oh, all important contributions must have been made by like straight cisgender white men, like in the United States. Like, I mean, like,
Yeah.
and
No.
and while many have been, and I'm, you know, some of my best friends, it's, you know, still like, I feel like, and honestly, my personal experience, I'm like me wandering here, but was I certainly was like punk scene was one of the things that radicalized me for sure. And I felt like wandering through and looking for connection was like often a way of learning about like, oh, like it's like you have to go on the quest to find, you know, like the Filipino rock scene or the like, you know, whatever, like.
Right.
So
35 years ago,
question, yes and no would be my answer to your initial question.
35 years ago, this would have been a dangerous band to take on tour.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
30 years ago, I mean, we wouldn't have felt safe to go out and be like, hey, we're this, you know, like
Right.
people were calling Sid Vicious, you know, the F word, and he was just a punker. People called me a punk, you know, they called me a faggot when I was on the street, you know, when I was in high school, just for looking different, you know. And my answer was always, yes, I am.
So I
And
think
like-
I've zeroed in on an answer for your question, and that's that in the Bay Area, I feel like we can play with anybody, and it's fine, and it's never a problem.
We're in a real bubble.
But
Right,
yeah, but
okay.
we're playing shows in like Oakland and Berkeley and San Francisco, where like of course it's not an issue. And then, you know, we're about to head out on like a little week-long tour down the coast.
Yeah.
Every place that I reached out to, the queer bands found us and put themselves on our show. And that's sort of like an act of solidarity that happens amongst queer bands. And I know it happens often with like all female bands, is that, you know, like they'll find each other and then it'll be safe. So like, I don't have to worry about playing in Bakersfield, California, because we're playing with a band that has a bunch of like queer non-binary kids in it.
Well,
and-
I was going to ask you if you don't mind, I hope you don't mind me asking, but so with this upcoming tour, because I know which one you're referring to, because you have a tour starting, I believe, in April 20th, if I'm not mistaken, that leads to a bit of some dates in May as well, too, which I think your last date that I recall seeing, at least in the spring, is going to be in Canada, in Montreal, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah.
So is there, again, I hope it's a fair question to ask, is there any concern that with certain areas that, let's say, for example, you may have not played before, are you guys doing your research ahead of time to make sure? Because in my mind now, I think that most people, I hope that most people are open to the idea that there's a band playing and they just happen to be gay. It doesn't really matter to me that they are gay. They're just playing music and they just happen to be singing whatever they want to get into here. But do you have do you have some concern about, okay, so if we're gonna go to this little area, we've never been there before, let's call some people, see if they know what it's like out there, so that way we can prepare for what may be coming down the pipeline once we land there. Because if there's going to be an issue where some conservative groups or whatever the case may be, they may have a problem with us out there, we want to make sure that we don't have to concern ourselves with having to deal with them directly, so we can just get there, play the show, and then hang out with some friends and then move out to the next gig. Is there a little bit of that for you guys in preparation for this upcoming shows you have coming down the pipeline?
No,
Yeah, honestly,
not at all.
Okay.
The slightest.
because if
We're not worried at all.
We're not worried at all.
We
Okay.
have guns. No.
Yeah, no.
only
Just
half
kidding.
of us have guns.
No, yeah.
No, the promoters in different towns that agree to do a show for us
Mhm.
walk into the situation with open eyes. Like they
Right.
know who we are, they're at least somewhat familiar with us. And the majority of the time they reach out to queer bands, and if there aren't queer bands that are available in that area, they reach out to bands that have queer members. And so by doing so, it automatically becomes, for us anyway, it becomes just a show. You know, like because we don't have to worry about being the people in the room that stick out like sore thumbs. And it's punk rock. Like the majority of the time, we're not going to stick out like sore thumbs, but you never know.
Right.
But not everybody loves it. I mean, sexism, homophobia,
Right.
transphobia is still a real thing in
Right.
the United States. These things they're real and people have feelings. Not everybody is going to be our buddy, you know, and people are afraid sometimes. They're afraid of us or one of us or some of us, or, you know, and we're just going out there trying to play some music for you. Like it ain't more complicated than that. So, you know, but people, you know, homophobia is dangerous. You know, people feel threatened or something. It's hard to wrap your head around it, but it's like, it's unfortunately still very real.
And also, like, those things can't, like, dangerous interactions and like threats can and do happen everywhere. Like people still go to the Castro, a known gay neighborhood, to like homophobes go to find people to beat up. Like, and I, you know, here in whatever month it is in pandemic swirl 2022, like it feels to me like has felt to me like a different moment where I'm living than, for instance, being on tour in spring 2017, but like touring with a queer band in spring 2017, I was like, oh, we are having like Nazis are following me on Instagram, and like, you know, without cell phone reception at this gas station where someone's says he's gonna tell all his friends about us, and I don't know whether he means that in a good way or in a like gonna come find you way, you know? But at the same time, like, yeah, so I guess, you know, not to, certainly I might exercise more caution, be sure to have buddies, etc. Like in, you know,
The buddy system, yeah.
like encourage that particularly, not a bad idea in the first place. But at the same time, like certainly I do want to like explicitly problematize the notion that like parts of the country are necessarily more dangerous or like
Concerning.
yeah, or like inhospitable to queer people than others, because it can really vary. And within that, there are real opportunities for connection too, right? I'll say one of the most uncomfortable shows I have ever played, where I felt actively concerned that I was going to get jumped in the parking lot, which did not happen. People came up afterward and like I have a years-long Facebook friendship at this point with someone who was like, like had just stumbled across the show, like went to the open mic and stayed upon hearing our band name, just sort of out of curiosity, and was like, had a real transformative experience apparently. And he was like, after your show made me realize there's some things I haven't really been like, well, their phrasing was like honest with people in my life about, and like it's given me a lot to think about. And like I can often, I was sort of like, oh, we're just like bopping along on the road, like playing goofy songs about whatever. And it's just a different band, the Homophobia, but like it's I guess I would just say like one of the things that I find really powerful and exciting about playing in bands like this that are like beacons, is that things that I do take for granted more often in the Bay Area, or just in general, like you never know what the ripple effects can be, is basically what I'm saying. And even as
We found you.
Well, yeah, but this is the thing though. I think, like I said before, when I first started here, when I rambled on, but I've always been very keen on learning about a person's journey, and the I guess you could say like the added element of like a person's background, where they're being, from whatever religious background they may be, ethnic background, sexuality, whatever the case may be. For me, so I'm trying to be really careful how I say this. Not that it's going to be controversial with what I'm going to say here, but I'm trying to be careful because sometimes I think too fast. But what I'm more really more interested in knowing, like I said before, it doesn't really matter to me that the person is gay or however they may identify themselves. It really doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is the person that I'm interested in talking to, because I've come across a lot of Hispanics. I'm Hispanic myself, that are jerks, but then I've come across a lot of other Hispanics who are very nice to me. I've come across a lot of African Americans who are not very nice to me. Got quite a few who are very nice with me. So it doesn't matter to me what the person's background is. And I think in me wanting to talk to you, there's certain aspects of a person's life, that of a community, that I haven't really been around enough. Not to say I've never been around queer folk. I have been, but never for me to have like a long lasting relationship where I can have someone that I can hang out with on a day-to-day basis. I've never really had that growing up, although I've been around enough queer folks, but never to the extent of like I said before, to develop a long lasting friendship. Nothing bad happened. It's just that it just never came to that point. But I think because of that, I think it did a disservice for me, because I became ignorant to other aspects of people's lives, that of where you hear these stories about how someone is going through some hardships because of their sexuality or the religious beliefs or whatever the case may be. But I'm always interested in learning how the person is able to overcome that, especially when you see how strong they are as far as their personality is concerned. But where have they learned to deal with that? That's what I've always been interested in. So again, when I've heard the interviews you've done, Sean, about your background, to me, you strike me as a very strong person, but someone who's gone through a lot of you've talked about your mental issues before, but having gone through what you've gone through, you strike me as someone who is very much in tune with who you are, learning to accept the things that you may lack in terms of like some things that you need to develop some more skills in, or areas that you have strong what's the best way I can say it, where you have a lot of strength in possibly communicating or whatever the case may be, that you've developed throughout the years. Like I said before, I believe that the music is kind of a way to help develop those skills, who I think in a lot of ways help with your personality. Because what I see you perform on stage, you're more or less the same person that I see you are when you're being interviewed in a conversation, or whoever you may be speaking with. I feel like that's consistent across the board. But for me, I'm always interested in learning, how do you develop those skills to do that? That to me is the most interesting aspect of the person's journey that I'm interested in here. There's a cameo. So, but again, I was just so like I said before, I hope you guys don't mind me just going into a tangent with that. But so my hope is to help you understand where I'm coming from with this, is that I am interested in having people learning about the person, not about the person's sexuality or the person's ethnicity or the person's religious background, just the person. And I think that if people can understand that, and then and accept the fact that, well, they happen to be queer. Doesn't matter to me. I like the person. That's really what matters to me. And they play good music. Doesn't matter if they're a queer band. They're a good band. That is what I see when I listen to you guys play your music. So, I hope you understand my position with that.
Yeah, I think as far as like performance and like lyrical content, I think so much of like, at least what we do from my standpoint, it's like, it's cathartic.
Right.
It's and Fureigh used this in an interview that we did like 2 years ago, this notion of defiant joy. So like having joy despite of, or in the face of,
Right.
is a lot of, and it's not always necessarily like centered around the cat butt.
It's not always centered around the cat.
It's not always centered around the cat butt, but
I'm gonna feed
but
these
often
to
it
stop.
is.
He's like, I'll show you fine joy.
I'm gonna feed these cats so they stop this, because that's
You
exactly
guys
what
just
this
stop
is about.
talking about the cat and
Cats
stop
shouldn't be
getting into camp.
stereotypes.
Oh, well.
I mean, when you grow up in the Bay Area too, when
Right.
you live in the Bay Area, you don't even have to grow up here. We live in a place that is known for gay people.
Right.
Like, we live in the center of gay acceptance. This is queer Mecca. People
Right.
come here expecting to find a queer Mecca, and it's whatever, but
it's what they make it.
it's known that the area that we live in, and we take a slice of this, and we can go anywhere and just be ourselves with our slice of this area, and it's just, we are, a band and a vibe.
The song's not out yet, but we have a song that's coming out on a compilation on Satan Records. That's a queercore comp. That's about growing up in a place that's known for being queer, and acknowledging the fact that we're like in this special place, and just by virtue of being born here, like we just are where we're supposed to be.
Right.
But people travel like thousands of miles, to live here, or just even to visit, to get a slice of that.
And like Josh mentioned, being harassed on the street, like certainly when I was a young person growing up in the Bay Area, I was bullied at school by people who decided my best friend and I were gay together. Neither of us identified as queer in any way at the time. But like, yes, on my planet now, we're very normal.
Right.
I've had life experiences where I'm like, oh, I guess, right.
If we go to
Not everywhere is.
If we go to Texas, though, I'm not going to wander around through the HEB in booty shorts looking for tofu. What they call a grocery store.
I mean, I feel like
And they don't have tofu.
but if we're
That's your
playing,
first
if
mistake.
someone's
asking for the tofu.
if someone in the deep south or somewhere books our band, they know what they're booking, and so I feel like, at least, I mean, the people that are going to that show know they're going to see a queer band, whether
Right.
because they're queer themselves, or they're curious, or they just heard the other bands are cool, or that our band is cool, or whatever, so
Right.
I'm curious.
Yeah.
I'm curious.
And I feel like, and after the fact, a lot of people might come up and just say something along the lines of like, oh, I don't know any gay people, but like, you guys seem really nice, like kind of
Yeah.
like surprised or something. Like they expect to be seeing something
Yeah.
completely different than just, we're just like four people playing music we love and having a good time, and like,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
there's messages and there's underlying things going on, but like really it's just like, we're just like everybody else, we're just having fun.
We're not trying to travel through the country doing conversion therapy.
Yeah, we're not trying to.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
It's
mean,
true.
there is something to be said about, wandering around certain towns and having a buddy and whatnot, and being, a young lady, I mean, that's just something I've gotten used to in general, even where we live, just to, especially being a photographer, et cetera, and like wanting to make sure that I got my bases covered so I don't get robbed or something. So
it's totally like, so I played in a band years ago where the night before we stayed at our roadie's mom's house, and she was a hairdresser, and she dyed our hair and she did our nails, and she decided that her mini skirt that no longer fit her looked better on our drummer.
Yes.
And so like we are playing in Lawton, Oklahoma the next day, still like on like this high after like having a really nice evening with our roadies mom, where we ate well and no, our drummer was a boy named Mikey. Yeah, you all know Mikey. And Mikey and I roll out of the van and like with our fresh nail polish and we just kind of walk around. We're about to go into Del Taco and we realized that everyone was staring at us. And I had to quickly look at everyone and go, everybody back in the van, everybody back in the van. And we went back in the van and drove somewhere else and had to have the person without fingernail polish on because they fell asleep the night before. Go get us nail polish remover for the duration of the time that we were.
No.
Yeah.
Was it really that kind of a bad situation where it required you to have to remove the nail polish for you just to be able to go into a restaurant?
Like, yeah, we can't at this point on. I don't want to.
You're actually breaking up there, Sean.
Like have to keep my years ago.
What's like with gay culture and with like drag culture, like it's very much in like it's on television, it's all over the place now.
Right,
it's
right.
not like it's as
Which sometimes just means that like the visibility has both sides, right? Like, which sometimes means, people are like, oh, you're clearly not from here and you're one of those, or like,
yeah.
I've been in the gas station with like, usually I'll just use whatever bathroom somebody seems to indicate they think I should be going into. But sometimes it's an easy sir and sometimes it's more complicated. But also I feel like they're like a record scratch moment is one thing. On the last Homobiles tour, trying to gas station in the bathroom, turned out the gas station was closed, as was the bathroom, and there was a nearby Chick-fil-A, and I was like, of all the places I feel okay about using the bathroom without like paying them anything, Chick-fil-A is on the list. Let's go. And it was we walked in and like the entire restaurant just like stopped for the full duration of the, we're like, okay, and there were a group of us, so like so everything was fine in the like a little stiff, but like and awkward, but nobody like there was no menacing happening. But I've definitely like heard from I feel like it's kind of a traveling thing. It's not necessarily specific to bands, right? But just like sometimes people go to a place and they're like, oh, we gotta get out of here,
Gotta be careful.
Yeah. Well, so this is kind of leading me to a question how the culture has changed a lot, which is why I was kind of starting off the question here about how you feel like things have changed, especially where you guys are growing up, or where you guys have grown up, and where you guys are living in now. Because I understand that certain pockets of the country are maybe more accepting than others when it comes to people's preference, when it comes to sexuality, religion, whatever the case may be. But then again, you're seeing the trajectory how representation is a big thing where we need proper representation for the Latinx community, the African American community, the queer community, transgender community, so on and so forth. And it's slowly starting to turn around, in my opinion, I think for the better, but I'm still kind of skeptical about how certain things are handled, because I always wonder if the people that are behind the scenes that are running the show, if you will, are doing it for the right reasons, rather for the reasons that it could be good for a monetary gain for them to be able to make more money, because hey, this is more popular now, let's start hiring everybody of these type of backgrounds so we can try to make as much money as we can out of it, rather than really taking the time to let's tell a good story and let's bring in the right people to tell the right story, and hopefully that'll catch on. And if it doesn't, we'll bring someone else that can try to add on to that and do something different where it didn't work out before the first time around, it can probably work out this time around, so on and so forth. So because of that, do you feel that the overall entertainment industry is doing a better job in showcasing representation? In this case, let's say with the queer community, or just in general. I mean, if you guys have a perception on that, on how you feel, how that's being handled.
I honestly, at this point in time, I feel like there's a limited pool of talent that people always dip into. And there's a plethora of queer artists out there who are musicians, who are actors. And I think sometimes it is a monetary issue.
Right.
Like, of course, we can pull from this person who's done a fine job acting as a trans woman before. Or we'll pull from this person because they're the one gay actor that fits like this niche demographic that we need for this. And they have the name. And I think that's just sort of like one of the issues that Hollywood is constantly grappling with. Like, right? Like at any given time, there's going to be 20 hot names. And I don't necessarily, I have opinions on it. I'm just sort of relaying that I think that that's the reason why, you know.
Interesting. Well, here's what I'm going to highlight with you guys too, because you know, growing up, there have been television shows or even films that have highlighted the queer community or the transgender community. Like for example, like not too long ago, for the first time, I saw the movie To Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar. I'd never seen that before as a kid. I've heard about them. I know I was aware of the film. When I saw the movie, I thought it was a wonderful film, in my opinion. I thought it was a really good film. The question that I had, though, because I don't recall what the general consensus was at that time, but the fact that it was three straight men playing characters in the drag community, was there an issue for people to point out that why can't you just actually hire real drag queens that can play the part to authentically portray the characters? But in my mind, I'm thinking these guys have done a wonderful job in portraying the characters that we're seeing in the film. But then also at the same time, around not too long after, we have films like The Birdcage, where you have Nathan Lane, who plays the husband to Robin Williams, who in real life is straight, but they play a gay couple. So, you know, there definitely has been times where we have films that have come out that have shown the, you know, a representation of the queer community to some extent, where I wouldn't say if they were kind of, maybe they were the punchline, because in my mind, I felt like the fact that Nathan Lane was in the production, that he had a lot to say about how it's going to be handled in telling the story. But, you know, was there an issue where some people felt like there might be there's a problem with having showcasing the queer community in that respect, and making kind of goofy and more flamboyant, rather than taking a serious turn to show the reality of a person in a situation like that, without having to making the punchline at every at the end of every scene, if that makes any sense. So do you have a little perception about that growing up at that time, and then how things are being handled now, where the punchlines are not on the gay person anymore, they're actually being shown more respectfully, to give them a time to show who they really are as individuals, rather than being the punchline at the end of a joke?
I think for that time period, it was totally accepted and fine. But I think if they made Tu Wong Fu now and they did that, people would be pissed.
Right.
But I mean, that movie, Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, are like two movies that drag queens love and, you know, reference and stuff currently. So, but yeah, you couldn't do that now, because it's more openly talked about now as being an issue, when it's not. If you're having a trans character in a movie played by a straight person that's not trans, like the representation should be there. But that was the 90s. In the 90s, it was, people were just happy that there was any movie about drag queens or any movie that had gay people.
You know what occurred to me just recently is one of my sister and I's favorite movies was Ace Ventura: Pet Detective.
Yeah.
And it was not until I'm an adult in my 40s rewatching that movie that I realized that the end joke is just a huge, it's villainizing a trans person. Like, that's the punchline of the movie.
Yeah. I remember it. Yeah.
You know, like, it's one of those things where, like, I just, because I watched it when I was so young, like, I guess it didn't impact me the way it would if I'd watched it as an adult.
Right.
But, you know, like, it was telling to me watching it as a grown-up and being like, what else like this did I like?
Right. Yeah. I know exactly what you mean by that.
So much.
Well, I'm like, looking back on it, like, like how many movies did I watch where there was a queer person who was the villain? A lot. Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, half of all of these movies. Yeah.
But when I was 13 years old, because I'm a little older, I got to watch La Cage aux Folles, which is
Me too. No.
Which movie was it again you saw?
Birdcage.
the
Birdcage.
original La Cage aux Folles, which
Which
is
means birdcage in French.
the birdcage in French.
Okay, yeah, you're right. I remember about that. Yeah, okay.
That's the original that they made the Robin Williams film because it was so popular in France and across and it played here, but it came out in 1978. And
Yeah.
that was a time in San Francisco when it was called the high cha-cha days of just everything was just a party everywhere, and
Right.
the drugs and the cocaine was a new thing, and
Right.
It wasn't addictive.
it wasn't addictive, it was nothing wrong. We had no AIDS or anything to worry about. It was just party all night, no consequences, and I was just a kid, but that was an amazing time, and that was truly an amazing time. But my point to that is that these people in the movie, in the film, they were just portraying this culture. It was like a real eye opener, and America gobbled it up. Like everybody loved it. Like,
And I don't think, the Birdcage is a remake, and I think everything's heightened in that. La Cage aux Folles, it wasn't as extravagant and like campy and out there in the way that like say Nathan Lane does stuff.
Right.
So, but
Interesting.
that movie, I watched that movie as a kid too.
But do you feel like though that because with you, Sean, you had mentioned before that watching Ace Ventura fairly not too long ago, where your perception of the film has changed, and then you started to realize how many other films have I seen that I thought were good, and then I'm realizing maybe they weren't as good as I thought they were because of how they in a lot of ways are not representing the queer community in a manner that is respectful, but rather being instead of showing them as a punchline. Do you guys feel like nowadays that with the way things are being handled and having transgender actors and having queer actors come in to play these respective parts, but not having them to showcase that, hey, we want you to be the flamboyant gay guy, so make sure you dress up like this and talk like that. Instead, you're seeing a lot more actors who are gay and are not having to portray characters like that, like where most people are used to seeing them under those circumstances. So do you think it's starting to come out for the better from what you can see from your perspective, or do you still think it's a long way to go before everyone's kind of gets their footing about having to tell a story without the person's sexual preference or religious background being the forefront, but rather just kind of the character's journey, but not the actual story in itself? I hope that makes sense with the question I'm asking.
So I would say that there's still some, at least from my casual observations, there's still some concern of being typecasted that takes place.
Yeah.
So like Sean Hayes, for example, how often do you see Sean Hayes play a heterosexual person? Neil Patrick Harris came out, and then all of a sudden he is like the gay guy.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
Right.
We're still waiting for the time when a character is judged based on their character and who they are as just a human, and not their sexuality or their proclivity or their past or their diet or what color of skin is, and all of it. I mean, there's a story that I heard from the actor Michael Jai White. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with who he is. Michael Jai White. He was Black Dynamite. He played Spawn in the '97 film that came out. What else was he in? He was in A Dark Knight. He was the guy that Heath Ledger killed with a knife in the mouth. Well, anyways, so I forgot the name of the movie that he was going to be working on, but the story that he shared was that it was a story about the character he was going to sign on to play was a straight man who was friends with a gay person and who lives in a home with a lot of gay men, but it didn't matter because they've grown up with each other, if I recall correctly. And you're seeing the story from everyone's perspective, but it did follow one particular character who happened to be gay. What he said, the reason why he didn't sign on to play on the character that he was offered was because the director of the film wanted to have his character to come out as being gay at the end of the film, where the entire time he was
was straight, or at least he portrayed him to be straight. Michael Jai White had said that he didn't have a problem with having to do that, but he said he liked the perspective of having a straight man in a friendship with of other gay men that he has respected, and he's earned his friends' respect, and they've earned his respect, and telling it from that perspective, but not having to alter, to change the trajectory of his character's journey and coming out being gay, because he felt like that there was something that could have been told that would be very important for everyone to see, that, oh, so there's a straight man friends with a bunch of gay guys, and he accepted them. But instead, at the end, he comes as being gay, and he didn't say he had a problem with it, but he felt like it just kind of he felt like there was a missed opportunity. So again, hearing stories like that, like I didn't realize how aware he was, and noticing that that's something that could be told that would be very, very important to share with everyone, and see that people from all walks of life can still be friends, and there should be no sort of rift, or there shouldn't be no sort of like ulterior motive to say, okay, by the way, this straight guy is gay, so now he's willing to open up, because that's not always like that for everybody who's friends with anyone who turns out to be gay. So hearing that story, like when you understand that, when you hear that, and you can hear from his perspective, do you agree with that for yourself, and understand why he chose not to pursue that role, because of what the change of the character that he felt like may have done a disservice to really tell a real story that everyday people actually go through, without having to come out as being gay when they wouldn't have been necessary to be told in the first place?
I mean, obviously, it's going to be perpetuating homophobia if he allows that. I think that's kind of just, let's perpetuate this thing that, like, you can only be friends with gay people if you're going to be gay ultimately.
Right.
I mean, that's,
Yeah.
people are,
Which, like, yeah, just it's unfortunate that because we exist in the context where, well, like, if there weren't ambient homophobia,
Right.
then there wouldn't be any like problem, like there would be no threat from, like the progress wouldn't be threatened by like a portrayal of that story, because it would just be one story among many, right? But I think it's
Right.
when there are not so many stories that then there's a lot of pressure to, it's like when only a few stories can make it through, which ones of those?
yeah, I mean, what if no one cared? Then it wouldn't matter, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But that's the risk, though.
Nobody
usually,
cares.
Right. If it was like,
Right.
sure. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the that this idea has come up a couple of times of like that people should be like, it shouldn't matter whether someone, like what someone's sexuality is, or what their religion is, or any number of other sort of demographic things, or that like they should, like, they might just happen to be XYZ, and I just want to put out there, now because of the internet glitch, I've forgotten what exactly led me to be thinking about this. So,
I'm sorry.
That's that point. But I just want to put out there, like, I think that there's, because we were talking about that storyline. I would humbly submit that the question of whether it should matter, like, all of those things can and often do, like, sexuality is an important part of a person's life, like,
Right.
and do inform like people's experiences. And I, for one, grew up primarily in the Bay Area as a white kid in a multiracial family, and was definitely raised at like, in like a colorblind like thing. And it was not until years later that my perspective shifted on it, because someone helpfully pointed out to me that essentially by treating everyone, in that particular case, by treating everyone the same, I was treating them like they were white. And in so doing, just kind of being oblivious to a lot of parts about people's experiences. I realized as an adult, two family friends with whom I'd hung out for years were Korean adoptees with white parents, and I never realized that they were adopted. And would we have talked about what their experience of that was like, or like what might be going on for them or coming up for them? Who knows? Maybe we would have just kept playing whatever games we were playing, building tree forts and so on. But like, But I certainly wasn't like there for them around it, you know,
Right.
in a way that I might have been differently. And I just I would suggest that the question of whether, I think the like should matter things, it's like, it shouldn't matter to whether someone's respected. It shouldn't matter to whether you can connect with someone. It shouldn't matter to whether, you know, like, whether, yeah, like whether, you know, whether you can watch a storyline about them and not both personally threatened or like insecure, you know. And I think that that's different than whether, like, I think it can both matter to like how, you know, what informs someone's experience and like whether someone's gonna, you know, walk around by themselves at night or like feel comfortable in your neighborhood or like, you know, whatever it might be, like all kinds of things. Want a briefing on what, you know, I wouldn't, don't presume anybody wants this, to be clear, but I was just incidentally reminded of like experience of heading into a lunch with some Southern Baptist relatives with my Jewish bandmates who were like, hang on, like, how does grace work? Like, we've seen it on TV, but what do we do if they start, you know?
Yeah.
And it just wouldn't, I mean, it didn't occur to me, it wouldn't have occurred to me, but like, but because they brought it up, I was like, oh, thanks for asking the question. You know, let's chat about it. It wouldn't have occurred to me that they might have otherwise felt like nervous or uncomfortable. That's not a blanket statement about Jewish.
Look at your lap and whack.
I'm just
Don't eat. Don't eat.
I was like, the main thing is,
I'm Jewish. I don't know what to do.
And I'm hungry.
Right. It's hard to not eat.
Anyway, that particular example is just putting it out there. We can go back to the media representation thing, but you know, and I do think that media representation often informs whether people feel like they can respect, you know, like if all that you see in media is people being disrespected, if all that you see in the news is people being disrespected,
Right. Yeah.
you're less likely to respect them and connect with them. Not you personally, of course, you know, but like ambiently, those things have consequences, sure. And I think as individuals we could do that.
I think one of the things that I often hear in defense of straight people is when placed in a situation where like they don't know, the defense is,
Right.
well, I don't know. And if it doesn't matter, then it takes the onus upon that person to know away. And it also kind of puts taboos around asking questions. Now, granted, you know, like there are some questions from some people that you're just not going to want to ask. But, you know, ask me, I'll tell you. I cannot speak for, you know, I cannot speak for a woman. I cannot speak for a Black person, but like, I can certainly lead you to the right places, hopefully, or give you a better idea. But it's perfectly natural to like notice that there's differences in people, and it's awesome. Like, awesome that we're all not the same person. Life would be really boring otherwise. I'm stuck with myself all the time, and it's a miserable place, and so that's why I like that. So I love getting to talk to people and learning about them, and you know, there's also like the homework you can do on your own, which oftentimes is in media representation.
Right. Well, you know, I think that's another thing about here's the thing about you know, why I said in the very beginning about, you know, having done my research with you guys, because I noticed that the more I started doing this here, I became more aware that it doesn't just apply to me doing this. This applies everywhere that you go. You mentioned before about having to do your research, and everyone just looks at a film, looks at a TV show, and think, okay, that's that is exactly what I think XYZ is like, because from what I saw on this movie or on this TV show. I honestly do believe that a lot of that, of you know, the lack of research comes from a place of really honestly from ignorance, where a person may not be they don't have any incentive to look into it because it doesn't have anything, they're not going to get anything out of it other than just knowing something. But because it doesn't affect them on a day-to-day basis, there's no reason for them to want to look into it further. When I started doing this here, and again, I hope you guys don't mind me bringing myself in this here, but I started to realize that the more research you do on a person or in a group, or whoever it is you're looking into, or who I'm looking into and say that I'm going to be speaking with here, I've actually learned a lot more about myself doing the research, because I've learned that I've become very ignorant, where I looked at something a certain way, But once I started delving into it further, the questions that I initially had set up to ask a person based upon just on, on face value of whatever I heard, however, from a certain interview, whatever the case may be, then I go look into it further. I realized, wait a minute, that question that I had it's not going to be a valid question asked because it serves no purpose to really learn about the individual. And there's nothing I will learn about them that I would like to understand who they are as a person. So, I hope that people in time will learn to be more willing to take the time to do the research, because I think a lot of it's more it's an inconvenience for them because I don't have time to sit down and take them to research X, Y, and Z because it's not relevant for me to look into that here. But I think in a lot of ways it could be relevant if you just take the time to look into it. So, when you guys are having to speak with someone who is in a position where they want to ask you a question, I'm sure a lot of it has, some people may want to ask questions, but they're afraid to ask because they're afraid it may come off being offensive, or they're afraid that it's, they may be asking the wrong question. So as a result of that, they may not ask any questions at all. And I think that further serves that ignorance where they're just not, whether they're afraid or not to ask you the questions, but it doesn't do them any favors in just holding it back. And I think they're afraid to ask the wrong questions because there's going to be retaliation for asking the question they believe may turn out to be disrespectful, but they don't know any other way of asking because they only know what they see. So I'm curious about how you guys feel about that for someone who is in that position, would like to ask this question, but is afraid because of the potential retaliation that they think would happen when in reality it may not always be the case.
I think Google's a good first stop. Your friendly local preferred search engine doesn't have to be Google. Go whatever you want to go with, but just like, I don't know, in general, if I'm particularly coming to that answer as like a trans person, but like, if there's something where I feel like my question might be kind of 101 about someone's culture or something, like I try to remember that when I don't know about other things, like how to clean a speaker properly or how to, fix this thing in my guitar, like I Googled it. And there's a plethora of information. Granted, not all the information out there is good. And
right.
Definitely someone approached me not too long ago, colleague of a relative, and they were like, hey, this person came to me and their kid just came out to them as trans and they're trying to, or whatever verb we want to use there, but this parent wanted to be supportive of their kid, great, and was looking to educate themselves. And this person was asking whether they could ask me for some suggestions. It's certainly not like my personal area of expertise, but my first thought was sort of like, well, why don't they Google? And then I did a Google search, and anyone who's watched The Social Dilemma or knows of it otherwise may be aware that like search engine results are not the same
right.
everywhere and for all people. But I will say, even so, like me looking it up from where I was in Oakland, the first results I got were awful, like transphobic and awful. So I was like, oh, okay, well then I'm glad that, I'm glad I wouldn't sign anyone up for this other than me. But like in that case, I was glad that I had not immediately, I was glad I hadn't left it at like, oh, look it up, So that story does go against the first point I was making, but like generally, if it's a more general question, I feel like it's not a bad place to start. And if the results are good, then maybe that's a decent starting point for a conversation of like, hey,
right.
I was curious about this thing, but also like books and so on are likely better than.
There's a famous saying, don't die wondering. And if you're curious about homosexuality, that's what that saying is for. Don't die wondering. And I learned that from my mom. So,
as a second generation queer person.
Yeah. So I'll tell you that. A lot of people, they're going to die wondering. They're never going to ask the hard questions. They're never going to wonder. They're never going to wonder. They're going to die wondering, what would it have been like maybe, and I have so many friends. Well, one friend comes to mind. I have a friend who's he is suppressed. He had suppressed his desire to just be more to be with dudes. Let's just say it. Okay. he always wanted to be with dudes. And it's like, okay. And then he was like, so he came to a point in his 40s where he was like, hey, I'm kicking it with dudes. And I'm like, how is that for you? And we were able to talk about it. And he was like, because he felt like he knew he could come to me. I'm in this fucking gay band, right? You got to be able to talk to me. I mean, this is my friend. He's gonna be
Whoa.
yeah. I'm like, that's cool, man. How is that for you? And he's like, man, I mean, it's pretty cool. It's interesting because my whole life, he's like, my whole life, I've been kind of keeping this part down. It's not cool.
Yeah.
It's not cool, man. And the guy was always a girl magnet. Honestly, I was a little surprised, and it's kind of funny. And then he's a cool dude. He's still a cool dude. Like, he had that experience, and you're gonna not die wondering, or you're gonna ask that hard question. And if there's someone that in your life that you think is gonna know an answer to something that you're wondering about, I'm the kind of person I would just ask anyone anything. Maybe I'd ask first, hey, is it cool if I ask you about this kind
Right.
of subject? Do you want to talk about it? And if it's me, I'm like, sure, man, ask me.
It sounds like he was hoping that you would hang out.
Nah,
I think so.
We're just friends.
I think
Sure.
one of the things that stops people from having those conversations
Right.
Is asking it in a way that would offend. So much of this is like preserving face, right? Like saying, like they don't want to ask it the wrong way, or they're afraid that you're going to be upset by the very nature, or just that like there's this sort of assumption that people should just know all the things.
Right.
And like you will be told by some people that they just do not have the capacity to answer that, or they don't want to answer it, or that you should go and do your own research. And that can sting sometimes because you were actually honestly looking for an answer,
Right.
or a dialogue, and you're not going to have it. But it stings less over time, and you will eventually get answers, right?
Right. Yeah.
Be the ones that you were hoping for or expecting, but you'll get answers. And then you'll walk away from it a more enriched person.
Do you think though in time people will be able to do that without having to having the fear of asking the questions to to educate themselves about in this case the gay community and having to understand, because the thing is like I always revert back to this one thing I remember hearing from my teacher who was Jewish, and he always shared his story to me, and I apply it to everyone now, but he was asked about he had asked about his rabbi, I think, the question was what's your perspective on the Jewish faith? He said, well, there's 14 million Jews, you're going to get 14 million different perspectives. So essentially he was like, that applies not just to the Jewish the faith, that applies to everywhere you go. And I always remembered that that lesson that he shared. So again, I used to make assumptions about lumping one thing into a big bubble here and thinking that it applies like that wherever you go. But again, as time goes by, I've obviously learned not to do that anymore. But I've also started to understand that lesson, that my question to you and your answer to me is not going to be the same as my question to Josh, and his answer to me is always going to be varying. It might be similar, but there's going to be distinct differences, which is why I said before that I'm very interested in hearing those distinct stories from each individual, because there's always a difference in every story. One lesson from Josh I can get, but I could get a completely different set of lessons I can from Sean, from everyone else as well too. But the point I'm getting is I think it's important to realize that. I hope I don't come off as trying to be like I'm trying to teach everyone a lesson. That's not the case at all. But I think that's, when you guys are sharing this information here, it really is helpful for someone like myself, because again, I'm always isolating myself, not because I hate people. It's just that I'm busy with stuff and I forget how important it is to immerse yourself in other people's lives, and understanding how the culture works and how people's perception is on that. Because I'm surprised, I've come to find out too, as I've gotten older, that one gay person's opinion on certain subject matters is not going to be the same as everyone else. Like, I was surprised a couple of years back to find out there's gay conservatives, and I had no idea they existed. So, I mean, little things like that I had no idea existed, just like there are Hispanic conservatives as well too. So it's like you have to really get to know the person and understand that just because they are identifying as one way, that doesn't mean that, because you know someone else who also identifies the same way, it's going to be like that all across the board. And that's a huge wake up call for a lot of people. And I think some people fail to realize that there is such thing as identity, but everyone likes to lump it up in one big uh, umbrella here. So I think with what you guys have been sharing with me so far, it's really valuable. But and I know that I intended on talking to you guys about your music too. I hope you guys don't mind me asking questions about your experiences of being a part of the queer community. But it's something that I've always felt like it's really important to understand, to hear um, all your guys' journey growing up, but to hear how it affected you and how you guys handle that moving forward there, and the tool of you guys using the music as a tool, as a way to express yourself. But again, I always hope that people don't look at middle-aged queers as that's just a gay band. No, middle-aged queers is a good band who happen to have gay members. That's how I always want people to perceive things, rather than looking at the as that as a sexuality as a way to identify them. I know it is part of the identity, but I don't want that I hope people can understand to look past it and look at the person. But again, I'm repeating myself here. So um I hope you guys don't mind me jumping into another subject here, because I'm actually really curious to learn more about your take on how you feel like you have evolved as musicians since you guys had started the group. Because I know, if I heard correctly, Sean, that you had mentioned before, you guys started back in 2018 in your restaurant, Josh, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Auxiliary kitchen.
You had a
Yeah.
vegan donut shop, if I recall correctly. Is that what I heard?
Yeah, I have a donut shop, but we were at I have a practice studio.
Right. Okay. So at the time, if I heard you correctly, Sean, saying that you guys were more or less just kind of just kicking it around, not taking it too serious, and then eventually it kind of snowballed into the career that you guys have ended up with it now, with middle-aged queers. But from that time you guys have started, do you feel personally, if there's, with all the years of experience you guys have, and playing various bands, that this being kind of like the I believe this is all your this is I'm not sure if you guys are in different bands at this point right now, or is okay, so you are okay. But with middle-aged queers though, having taken the experience you guys had with all the other groups and your groups you are still with now, but being able to use this as a way to kind of help um, expand your career, I meant to say, and with the music, do you feel like you guys have gotten better as musicians when it comes to how you are able to express yourselves with the music you guys are playing, or are you guys just coming in from a position where this is just a way to vent out, and whatever comes out of it is what it is? Because I'm wondering if you guys have a goal in mind, or if there's a purpose of how you guys are using middle-aged queers to be able to um, talk about whatever it is you want to get into, as a way to express however you may feel that day or that week, or whatever the case may be. I hope the question made sense to you guys.
Answer one at a
Right,
time.
one, two,
One at a time.
one at a time. I thought you were going to say let's all answer together at the same time. I will say that I played bass in every previous band that I've been in, and my vocal contributions were every once in a while, like I'd have like maybe a few songs on a record that I would take the lead vocals on, but it was mostly backup vocals. So this was very different for me in that all of a sudden I had to come up with a bunch of words and write lyrics, which was a fun challenge to rise to. And despite not playing an instrument other than my voice, I've written more songs in this band than I have any other band. And so there was also something kind of like, I don't know if it's just like how I evolved as a musician over time, or if I just had like, and it's been like a decade since the last band that I was in prior to Middle-Aged Queers. So maybe I just had like a bank of songs ready to, like, in the back of my head waiting to burst out. I'm not exactly sure. But it's been kind of neat to, I realized in this band that for like 20 years, 25 years, I had like hidden behind a bass. that like having like a bass guitar in front of me like gave me some sort of security blanket, and it's really weird not having it.
But do you feel better doing singing without having that security blanket that you're referring to? Or do you feel like you're a better musician as a result of not having to do that and be able to express and use the music to test that or to articulate those other areas of your musicianship that you think that more or less the bass, I wouldn't say held you back on, but because to me it sounds like it's a lot of self-contained energy where it's just you have too much going on that you need to let loose, and the bass more or less kind of like just kind of kept you at bay, if that makes any sense. If that's how I'm understanding it.
In retrospect, that I will like the songs that I've written and then I wrote lyrics for them. For the most part, I cannot play them and sing at the same time because I've just written in a way that is counter to the way that I'm strumming. So that was kind of eye-opening. That like I'm writing lyrics in a way that I wouldn't have before.
Okay. How about for the rest of you? Are you guys do you have a perception about how you guys feel, how you guys have grown as musicians, individuals, and as far as how your careers is going with the music?
Hi. I mean, prior to this band, I hadn't played drums in a band in 10 years. So I did a very tiny tour with a friend's band, very randomly. And then came back from that and was like, I need to play drums. I need to be making music again. And then this band started. So it's definitely the most prolific band. And I probably have grown a lot as far as a musician because we do so much. So yeah, I mean, I've been playing drums for way too long now, but I definitely feel like this band has really made me a better drummer. So
in what way do you think for you?
Just because I'm challenged more, and and we do more. I mean, we're constantly, we have all these shows and we're recording all these albums and stuff. It's just there's a lot more being put into it and a lot more focus as opposed to being in a band that's like maybe
a hobby.
Yeah, well, it was never. My old bands were they were never hobbies, but they weren't like the forefront. It wasn't like the main focus of anybody's like.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
Life, it was like the second thing, the third thing, and this is we're definitely, and thanks to everybody in the band that's trying to push to make it more than just like fun. So
she's telling you all this while icing her wrists
because my hand is fucked up. Don't
yeah, because we've broken our drummer.
I'm broken now. I've drummed too much. My poor hand is very angry at me for doing too much.
You gotta check yourself before you wreck yourself, I think. So it's okay, it'll be better. But I'll say,
if something hurts,
yeah.
If something hurts, figure out what's causing the pain and do something about it. This message brought to you by someone who recently had to stop playing guitar for months and months and months because I thought like, oh, it just happens, like just like, oh, my back hurts, my shoulder's hurting. That's just like getting older, I guess. It's not. Anyway, unsolicited PSA.
I'm doing a thing personally. I'll throw this out there.
This is that middle-aged part of our band right here.
We went from musicianship to like all of our physical ailments.
Yeah, I mean, I'm turning 57 in July, but I like to play soccer, and I've been on a soccer team for years. Been playing soccer on the league locally for like 15 years.
What position?
20 years. I play usually defense. Sometimes I'll be a striker. I've got a lot of goals. But turning 57 and muscles and and aging and COVID and not playing for 2 years and then getting out there and doing it, it's like it's really similar to the thing with this band. And like Sean and Nikki, I hadn't been in a band for like maybe longer than 10 years. I played music here and there, but I hadn't really been in a band that was playing. I don't think. I mean, I've done little projects, but not in like a band that was playing for over 10 years. And for me, it's just great. You know, it's like anything that you're back practicing, you get your chops. And you know, I can be a good bass player when I play regularly. I could also not be a good bass player. I like to play sloppy, but when I practice regularly, I can be like, it's like, it feels good. You know, you want to be good. You want to be out there striking the goal. You want to be out there, you know, stealing the glory of the person trying to attack your team's goal. Right. You want to be out there, you know, winning on the field, not losing. And it's sweet to like be in a band that's got some momentum and is doing some stuff. We have a reason to live doing what we're doing. There's a cause behind it. There's a raison d'etre, you know, a reason to live behind it. I mean, it's like having a cause. It's like this queer core message, and the kids of America are into this. And you know, it's like I see all these little bands that you're never going to hear of that we play with. All these people who are doing things, and they're, you know, this kid that I meet who's got a Casio keyboard, who's making songs, and it's adorable. But like, you're never going to hear about them. But yeah, we get to go out and like go on the road or like play a big venue or something. It's amazing. I mean, this is definitely fun. It's like top of the game. It's top of the game stuff.
Josh just brought up a really good point that I'd like to underscore, is that despite our age, we pack all ages shows.
Yeah, it's fun.
And like,
I did notice that in a lot of the shows you've had posted here recently. Even your most upcoming shows here, all of them have. I think one I only came across is 21 and over, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Two.
Okay.
But for the most part, they're all ages, and it takes a little bit of extra work to find how to make those happen. But we generally like find the teenagers in that town, and then just like, hey kids. Yeah, like, but seriously, like, where do you all play? Sometimes I'll just like look at their flyers and be like, okay, so they're playing there. Like, because the adults and bars are like, it's cute and fun to like run into our friends who, you know, maybe want to go to a bar and have some drinks and see us. But it's also really, really fun to watch like a bunch of like teens and 20 somethings like bop around while we play.
And then come up to us afterwards, so excited to meet us.
Right,
and
that's
like, and I'm like, what? And he's like, oh my God, I've been waiting all week to meet you guys. And I'm like, you have? Like, okay.
Or whenever we play Gilman, I always have a group of kids come up to me and tell me that they're in a band and that they've started a band. And they're all like, you know, high school kids, like early high school. And it's awesome. It's like,
and that's the same as all of us being inspired by other bands and being told, go start your own band. And like, if some kid is watching this podcast and they're like, whoa, you know, I think I should start a band. Like, you absolutely should.
Find your friends that have instruments, or their parents or uncles have instruments, and be terrible.
Teach yourself how to play, whatever. Doesn't matter.
That's actually one of the most honest advice I've ever heard someone say. I can't recall if I ever heard or said what you just said, Sean, where you said, go out and play and just be terrible. Like, something about that really appeals to me, because I think most people in your position that would that have played for years would probably tell kids, you know, do the best you can, but be terrible. That's actually one of the best things I've ever heard. Something about that really speaks truth, in my opinion.
Have write songs that are just noise, like whatever. Your friends will come and it'll be fun.
He mentioned Gilman Street, which is our local all ages club, and I used to work there and be a part of it some years ago. And I'll say there were so many terrible bands. There were so many terrible bands full of these high school kids that went on to become big deals. Like, whoa, like that terrible band, remember, ha ha ha. They're like packing the stadium today.
So
if you don't get out there and actually play in front of an audience, it's like, I mean, you can play in a practice space and it could sound great, but there's a whole different thing being on a stage.
Right.
My good friend used to tease me in my first band. He was like, when are you going to play a show? I was like, I don't know. We're not ready yet. And he's like, you've been practicing for over 6 months. You just need to go play a show. Like, just stop. Just go and some shows and just don't stress about it.
Get in front of people and do it.
The first show that I ever played was in a grindcore band, and we opened the show at Gilman. Grindercore band. We opened the show where Jello Biafra got beat up at Gilman.
Oh, no.
That was our first show. Not that was a planned event of the show or anything, but just for background context. And the guitarist of that band went on to join Exhumed and Phobia and his Nails. He's been in like all of these like very prolific heavy metal bands. And his first show ever played was at 924 Gilman Street. You know, like, and we were awful. It was terrible. I think we played like 4 songs. He broke a string. We made a bunch of noise and then we left.
Oh, my first bands were terrible.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna diss my first band on this interview. I thought we were okay.
But Fureigh didn't get a chance to answer the question.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, well, just on that first, real quick, I will say, like, I was absolutely like a teenager who was like, I don't know, I think that there's a lot of value too in like finding a scene, like, like, you know, going to the shows and gasp talking to people, you know, and it doesn't have to be in person necessarily, right? And I do think that, you know, when possible, like those kinds of physical containers for community can be really valuable. I definitely was like reading books about punk and like looking stuff up online and like practicing in my room, and absolutely felt like, you know, you must be this good to like do something, which when I talk with my many friends now who were like involved in Riot Girl, you know, at that age or like years earlier or whatever, I'm like, wow, like how different might things have been if I had not been so, you know, I think the more like heartbreaking version of this that I think I have less recently, but for years I was involved with a few different rock camps. Some of them are called rock camps for girls, some of them are called other things, but like underrepresented genders. And one of them, the Willing Rock Camp for Girls in Brooklyn, had a fundraiser that would happen regularly where basically it was like a weekend version for adults, for women, etc., who I'm speaking in extreme shorthand. I wouldn't recommend anybody actually use etc. as a term, but for women and non-binary people and people who felt that, anyway, this whole conversation. But point being, folks could sign up for a weekend, like take some lessons, form a band together, do a performance, write a song, do a performance at a real venue, which is a weekend version of what the week was like for the kids. And I was, you know, volunteering as an instructor, and just remember there was some incredible, like, there was a drummer who was like, we'd been playing for 40 years and had never once played with another person. She was so good, you know, but she'd never played with another person. I don't know. I wish I, you know, thought to ask her like what prompted her to take the leap to do this thing.
Waiting,
you know?
for perfection.
But like, well, what made the difference for her to actually do that weekend is what I mean. But yes, absolutely, you know. So yeah, everyone, you know, don't expect like one as a recovering perfectionist, one framing I have recently learned and found sometimes helpful is to generally not real into binaries about a lot of things, but like reframing the definition of like success or it being good enough or something as like, like, did I do the thing or not? Not like how good was the performance I gave or the talk I gave or like, I wish I'd changed these things, but like, did I in fact get up on stage and do the thing? Yes. All right. Like, check, you know, you did the thing.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm sure you learned something, you know, like, sure, reflect on it, but, you know, don't beat yourself up. I'm like, hey, Miles Davis got like yelled at by his neighbors for being terrible at first. And, you know, nobody's.
No one's yelling at him anymore now. Yeah.
Case in point, I saw Jawbreaker. Actually, I saw them just recently, but I saw them maybe like over 2 years ago before the pandemic. And I lost track of the number of times that they had flubs in their set. And I loved every second of it. I loved the fact that these were like some grown-ass men who had reformed their band, had been practicing for a few months, and had like sold out this giant club and were messing up their own songs, and they were leaning into it, like they were having a blast with it, and so was the crowd. And so like here is this band that has reached international rock stardom that reformed because the people demanded it,
Right.
and they were goofing off and having a great time. You know?
Do you guys get nervous playing even up to this point with the amount of years you've had playing in bands? Do you guys still get nervous to go out on stage and perform? Or if you don't get nervous, do you guys have do you have to prepare? I'm not sure if you guys have like superstition, because I've heard some musicians I've come across did have superstitions, but do you guys have any sort of preparation about what you to get yourself prepared going on stage for you to be able to play it to the best of your ability? Because I'm curious on how each of you guys handle yourselves in preparation for the show before you guys start playing.
I don't get nervous before a show, but sometimes I need to go to the bathroom. That's just me. How about you?
It varies for me. I have learned that I used to experience this thing that I called the claw, in which my hand would sometimes like freeze up. Not 100%, but it felt like it was not really, and I was like
oh. Cramping? Is that what you mean by that? Like,
it didn't hurt. I just my hand wasn't doing what I wanted it to at all.
Okay.
I'd get through the set okay, but not nearly as well as I was planning to. And I have learned that a few things help me with that, including warming up. So now I make a point to warm up before our sets. But I think the psychological trick that if I am feeling nervous and if I remember this trick and use it, it's helpful to me, is to remind myself that like everyone is like, technically this is not 100% true, but like generally I like to think that like everyone's here to have a good time. Like people are looking for it to go well. Like, yeah, sure, maybe there's some jerk out there who's like, I'm just waiting to catch you out and, you know, like mock you forever on the internet or something. But like, it's like people, you know, like people want it to go well. And even more so, like, when I can think of it as like, to me, it's like a generous act when somebody shares their work with me. And so, you know, I don't say that to be like, oh, I feel so generous, you know, but just that when I can reframe it as like, you know, I'm just going to share this thing, like, that's helpful to me often in taking the focus off of like, am I good enough? Did I do it right? Blah, blah, blah. And more to like, okay, what can I, like, how can I serve them or whatever?
Got it. Okay.
Nikki?
Luckily, we're in a punk band, so even if you are terrible,
There's that.
Perfect.
Just move around more, you know.
What I'm gonna do? I'm gonna move around more. I'll just start jumping out of my seat and spinning in circles. I used to get nervous. I don't get nervous as much in this band, with the exception on if there's like a really good like friend of mine in the audience that's a fellow drummer. Like if there's like a drummer in the audience that I admire, if it's like someone I know, then I might be a little nervous. But I don't know, not as much with this band. I think I finally got over it. It only took 39 years. We'll say 37 years since this band's been together for a while.
I'm usually too high on acid to care.
That's
That's a lie.
Citric acid.
I've been sober for 15 years.
No drugs. We're a wholesome group.
Mm-hmm.
We're wholesome.
We are.
The shows are all like,
We got some holes right
The
here.
three of you.
wow.
We're a wholesome bunch of grown-ups.
Respectable.
Middle-aged people.
In talking with friends about the upcoming shows, I've been like, they're mostly all ages. They're also not safe for work. So make of that what you will, you know.
There's a fine line there.
Yeah. I've only been nervous before one of our shows. And that was when it was before Fureigh was in the band. It was when we played, we opened for the Avengers and Agent Orange. And I don't know like why. I think it was like the number of people that were there
It was a really big show.
It was a big show.
So you're talking about the crowd, is what you're referring to, right?
Yeah, it was,
Really big.
Okay.
It was-
First really big.
it was a sold out show at a big theater in SF.
It was the
Um,
biggest venue we had played at that point,
yeah.
I think.
And
You were nervous?
yeah, I was nervous.
Yeah, I
And
remember
like
you were.
Josh, I had to like, I kept on, for whatever reason, I had it in my head that I was going to have to pee while we were on stage. They'd asked us to play for 40 minutes, which at that time was like double our normal set. And like, I was like, 40 minutes, but I may have to pee. And so like, I was like trying to like time my my cutoff. And at one point, like I remembered something that somebody had told me that like nervousness and excitement are physiologically the same thing. And that if I could just like say I'm excited to myself, then maybe I could believe it. So I just kind of like leaned into being overly excited instead. And that worked. I like talked to the bouncers beforehand because I was really worried that we were gonna like get in trouble for being us at like this nice club. And so I like talked to the head of security before we played, and I was like, so I do this thing in one of our songs where like I go out into the crowd and I like have them sing along.
Yeah, I've seen that in some of your performances. Yeah.
Are you gonna get mad if I like jump the barricades? And they were like, no, it's totally okay. Are you gonna jump? And I was like, well, no, I'm gonna like step there and then step there and then I'm gonna like jump in. And they were like, okay, so we'll just have someone follow the microphone line and like get you out if you need help.
That's cute.
They were like, that's what we always do. And then the head of security for this venue was like, you are the first person ever to ask permission to do this.
Very polite band.
But
That's
as soon
very,
as I
very
got
nice.
that go ahead, because I didn't want to like anger the venue.
Right.
And
And
then
the last, because San Francisco,
what's that?
and the last.
Yeah.
Because the club shut down.
Oh yeah, it's true. The club shut down shortly after we played there.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Connection.
No, yeah.
Oh, is it-
Town too. They pulled it all over.
Because you jumped the stage, that's why they closed down. That's right.
They're like, middle-aged queers, jump the stage, it's all over for you. No, they closed during the pandemic.
No, I figured that's what it was too.
You know, and
I was nervous at that show.
Yeah.
Well, because my drummer friend I'm very close with, who's very good, was in the audience in the front row waving at me. And it was a big
That show was just sort of like a bullet of chaos from beginning to end.
Well, it was a good show for you guys though, for considering the crowd size, and I'm sure a lot of people were into the music though. So do you feel like it was a lot of a good feedback from the crowd reacting well to your music?
Amazing is 3 months later, we played a show in San Francisco at a gay leather club. And we had a ton of people come up to us at the merch table and tell us that they saw us at Slim's with Agent Orange and the Avengers. And these were like presumably straight couples who had decided that their date night for the evening was to go watch Middle-Aged Queers, that band that they'd seen a few months before, at a gay leather club.
Yeah.
So we're really breaking down some barriers. Yeah.
That's awesome. I love hearing that. That's awesome. So here's the thing. Because you talked about your live performances. I actually did check out quite a few of your shows, and in fact, for anyone who's not aware, you guys have a YouTube channel that has a lot of your some of the music videos or the songs that they have released as singles, including some live performances as well too. So I'm curious about how, because I've asked this question before with other bands, but I'm curious to hear your guys' perspective as well, because we talked about the recent the show that you had a few years back where you had a pretty good turnout for a crowd, but then how do you guys deal with with shows where there may not be a lot of people there? Because to me, when I watch all the shows that I've seen on your YouTube channel and some of the other ones I've come across on YouTube, it's pretty consistent as far as the performances are concerned. But I'm curious if you guys, I'm not saying that you guys don't care how many people are out there. That's not what I'm implying here. But I'm curious if you guys have a certain mindset about, we're going to do it no matter how many people are there, whether it's 10 people, 1,000 people, 100 people, we're going to give it our all. Or do you guys truly play no matter what's out there? Because I'm curious to hear how you guys perceive on your take on performing live, despite the crowds or whatever the case may be.
The show is a show.
Right.
Yourself out there at the same level, whether it's 10 people, 100 people, 1,000 people. I feel like we're going to play to the best of our ability. I will say that there is a certain thing that happens when you have a really big crowd that can really stir a person up and make them do more, be more.
Right.
It's funny. It's like it can be an embodying. Would you agree? It's like a spirit that takes you.
I think there's crowds have energies, different crowds have different energies, and
Right.
like a large crowd that was like having a heckling, menacing energy would be a different thing than a small crowd that was really stoked. And certainly I've played, especially like all ages shows, sometimes there's a smaller crowd, but everyone's like doing a goofy dance that they just made up and like throwing water and whatever, people.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's both like the human factor of it's kind of the same way go to New York City, or often people feel just the reality of there being a lot of people. But in terms of what kind of a show to put on, personally, I feel like if I want to respect, I appreciate that whoever showed up, and I want to give them, a good experience. And
Right.
it's not, those 10 people, 100 people, 3 people's fault that there aren't more folks there. And even if the room is literally empty except for the sound person, maybe the sound person will be a fan if they weren't already, and tell all their friends what a bummer it was that recently, it's I've been in situations where there's discrepancy of opinion about that, and I just feel like it's disrespectful. Nobody owes us anything.
Not every night's a winner.
No one owes you.
Right.
I find that it's the nights that things aren't going so well.
Yeah.
That I go 110%.
This is true. This is so true. It's ridiculous.
You're the compensator.
Yeah.
Kind of. It's like it all of a sudden then becomes the catharsis then is the accumulation of things and that moment. We played in Vegas for punk rock. Oh, okay. Tell it.
I was gonna say that.
All right.
We played probably our worst show ever in Vegas. It was so bad that Sean compensated by jumping up and down to the point that my drums were shifting and moving away from me. And I had to yell at him to stop jumping so much because I would pull them back and then they would immediately just start sliding away while we were playing.
At one point, I started getting afraid that the stage might break out from underneath us.
Yeah, it was.
For the amount of jumping that you were doing.
I was just moving like crazy, and
yeah.
To be fair,
Okay.
in my defense, there was nothing but compliments the next day on what an amazing performance we did.
Definitely.
I wasn't 100% kidding about if it's not going well, move more.
Yeah, exactly. Move more.
He was all over the map that night.
And I had trouble walking the next day because I jumped around so much. But it was okay, this is it. Any sort of flaw that's happening, divert the attention. But yeah, there was one point where I stopped and I was I may break the stage, and that would suck.
That was
a terrible show.
And then I found myself doing it again 20 seconds later because I was this is what I do. Anyway.
Yeah, sometimes I hurt myself on stage performing, and it's just I have to remember, okay, you can do whatever you want, but just don't hurt yourself. It's no fucking worth it.
I bought custom orthopedics specifically for that trip for punk rock bowling because I knew I was going to be walking around. I knew we were going to be playing, and they did nothing for me. The next day it was just But also I was not expecting to be jumping off of the stage onto concrete like that.
We really get
crossballs and foam rollers on our spring tour.
Yeah. Ooh, crossball is a good idea.
What's for you guys? What do you guys feel like is actually your best show? And I'm not talking about the crowd size. I'm talking about you feel like you guys were at your absolute best, where you feel like everything went well. At least as well as it could go, but you guys had given it your all, where you feel like that this is what, this is who we are, or when we're doing this is us at our absolute best, and whoever got to see us saw us at our prime, if that makes any sense. I hope that's a fair question to ask.
Maybe we each have an answer for that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Lock your answers in.
No,
But
I
for
can't.
me,
I can't remember all the
but for
shows.
me, it was an all queer band show that we played in the backyard
That was so
at
good.
at a little venue called Oakland Secret, and it was just like it could have been someone's backyard. I mean, we were just
It
we're
was.
back there, we're on the dirt, we're in just the crowd is like right there, and we just did our thing. And the PA was terrible, we were terrible, the crowd was awesome. It was good, but good isn't terrible. It was good. It was fun. I mean, it was as fun as it can be, We're a punk rock band. We're not trying to be slick, we're not trying to be.
Right. Okay.
I think sometimes the best show is not necessarily like the best show as far as like if we were all on point and played every song to perfection, because that show that he's speaking of was probably the most fun show that I think we've ever done. And I think there were definitely moments in it where I might have like missed a beat or like fumbled somewhere, but it didn't matter because we were still all on it, and it was just like, it was such a blast.
My microphone stand was broken, it was falling, and I kept having to sing like and follow it down, and then between songs I'd tighten it up and then it'd fall again, and I'm like, whoa.
Making a note for my tour packing list. Genuinely.
Yeah.
I
It
have
was
a
fun.
Duct tape.
It's a rubber band.
Oh, rubber band.
I love you guys are just are prepping up for the tour here, making every list.
So.
Oh, what was my
so
favorite?
good. Yeah.
Oh.
Do you have one?
Yeah.
I was gonna say the Halloween show at the Elbow Room.
Oh.
It was very bizarre. We were opening for Man on Man, which is Roddy Bottom of Faith No More's new band. And we
another queer artist.
But
yes, I know he is. Yes.
We it was weird. It was very weird. It was like a Halloween, so you never know like who's gonna show up because there's so many like competing things. So we got like the weirdos showed up, which is our tribe, and they weren't all weirdos that we knew, which is always pleasant and wonderful. And I dressed up as Alf. And then we eventually got down to our underwear.
Like,
because we were dressing up like, Man on Man. Man on Man had a music video where they dressed in just their underwear. So our Halloween costume was us dressed up as Man on Man.
Excluding myself.
Tidy
because I couldn't
whities.
get
We
into
all
my
wore
room.
tidy whities.
But because there's more of us than there are their duo, we were Man on Man.
Speak for yourself.
yeah.
There's more.
Man on Man on Man. I think that was the perfect balance of like fun and like I think we killed it that night.
We just killed that night.
And
we had the better sound.
and Roddy Bottom specifically said we normally go out to our car to rehearse like while the opening band plays, but we didn't tonight because we wanted to listen to you all. Like you kept us in there.
Oh, that's nice.
From a childhood, I still love Faith No More, and I still listen to those first 3 albums.
Yeah.
That was a huge from a fellow queer artist that I admire.
Yeah, that's a very nice compliment. I agree with you on that. Okay, well, so let me move on to something else because I'm really curious about. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I am so sorry.
I have fewer to have to review because I'm much newer to the band. But I would add, I really liked we played a show, the Ivy Room, that was a fundraiser for this event called Year of the Fistmas. It's a fundraiser that a band, Year of the Fist, organizes every year around Christmas. And it was a fundraiser for this organization, Deaf Hope. And I do not remember what, I think it was you who started it.
I did a
Josh
thing.
said something.
I got excited
This is
and
not
I
the
did
only
a thing.
part, But like Josh said, the whole thing was a fundraiser, right? And
It
like,
was a
the games
fundraiser.
were lovely. It's been a great night. Bunch of folks, many of whom I don't know.
There was a
friends who were there were like,
raffle.
it's the first show I'm going to since
It was a benefit.
yeah. And things were going well. And at a certain point,
At
do
a
you remember what you
point
said?
in the beginning of the show or after the first song, I just took the microphone and I'm like, what I want to see is everybody just throw money on the fucking stage. And I had prepared a bunch of $1 bills. I had a whole pocket full of $1 bills that were ready right in my front pocket. And I'm like, throwing money down on the stage to get it rolling. And the crowd just was like,
That was
yeah. And by the time we were done with our whole set, the whole stage was covered in 1s, 5s, 10s, 20s.
People were like making it rain on my pedal board.
It
Which
was
is like, I
just-
think it's
Yeah, I slipped and fell on dollars.
Yeah,
That was really good. I gotta say.
It was
Yeah.
It
it
was
was
an extra $400.
No.
Am I misremembering?
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
700.
It's $700.
It was $700, you guys. Wow, that's amazing.
$700 in 1s, mostly 1s, but 1s, 5s, 10s, and 20s, covering the stage, and it was absurd.
From a delightful, clear call to
Yeah,
action.
I forgot about that.
Did you ever decide to do that again to see if it worked the next for the next show?
Next benefit, yeah.
We should just do it when it's not a benefit.
Yeah,
This gas is expensive.
Gas is expensive.
that's expensive. Yeah.
There isn't like a cause.
That
you know,
was-
and
That show was pretty epic. All I kept
Speaking
thinking
of energy, creating energy at shows, like,
Yeah.
it's really something.
I dressed up as a giant blue dreidel for that show.
I was so every once in a while there'll be a show where I will be bummed that I am stuck behind my drums and that I'm not out front with my camera, and that was definitely like the show. I feel like there was a moment in between songs where I was like, I have to get my phone and get a photo of this because it's so amazing. This is just so exciting.
Yeah.
I took a quick video, like halfway through, scooping up dollars after the set. And it was like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
as quickly as possible because it's rude to not. And I was like, you should just take 1 second. I'm like, what is left here? 'Cause
there was another show where we all worth mentioning where we all wore Juggalo makeup.
Oh yeah,
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I think
we
we
were
should
a
do that.
Juggalo band.
It was
I think we should do that for Fest
We're gonna do that again.
because it's Halloween.
Yeah,
That would be awesome.
ridiculous.
Yeah,
Is there a video of that show you're talking about? We had the Juggalo makeup on.
no, there
might be
isn't.
some.
There's
Oh
not-
man, I would love to have seen that.
When is this episode coming out?
I was very looking forward to speak with all of you guys, and to be completely honest, I wasn't sure if it was going to be the entire group or if it was just going to get Sean. I had no idea how it was going to turn out because it's very. Whenever I reach out to bands, sometimes it's just one person, 3, 4, 5. It's never going to be the entire group in most cases here. So you're actually, I think, the very first group I've ever talked to where everyone showed up. So this was something that I was really looking forward to. So I want to thank you guys very much for giving me your time to speak with me on this here. And I make it I make an attempt every time to whoever I'm speaking with to hopefully not make it a redundant process where you're being asked the same questions over and over again, because that's something that I try to avoid doing. Because truthfully, I hope you guys walking away feeling good about the conversation. But the fact that you guys have given me a great conversation for me to bounce off of you guys and be able to ask questions that you guys have been very forthcoming here, it really does mean a lot to me. So I wish you guys nothing but great success in your careers and whatever you guys decide to do in life. But I really do wish nothing but the best here for you guys. So in closing here, I want to know if you guys would like to have anything you want to announce, because we've already announced the fest here, but because by the time this does upload on the channel, it'll be close to the upcoming tour you guys have here. So I have the dates here written out for all the shows you're going to be playing here, which I'll have on the screen for people to check out if you don't feel like getting it onto the dates here for you for what you guys have coming up here. So is there anything in closing you guys would like to say for us to sign off here with?
If you want any more information about us, Fureigh created the new Middle Age Queers website, www.middleagequeers.com, and you can sign up for email list.
Whoa.
Yeah, we're future now.
Not to be confused with militant.gay, which currently takes you to the Bandcamp, which is also great.
Yeah, I also own militant.gay. So if you go there, you can buy our records. And our next record is coming out sometime this year.
Yeah, there's 10 records, right? This is for Shout Out the Hetero, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The record that we recorded a year ago, and we're
Yeah.
still waiting for it to get pressed.
Get depressed.
Get to press. We're to get to press.
So you should have to wait for that these days.
Yeah.
I'm waiting to get depressed,
Yeah.
but I keep being upbeat.
Mhm. Yeah, there's a bunch of different comps that are coming out over the next couple of months that we're on as well. One on Satan as well, which I mentioned in the interview. But shout out to our fellow Bay Area queer tinged band Sarcasm, who is also on the compilation.
Yeah, and if you're a person out in the world who's in doubt, I don't know if I should play music. Get out there and be terrible. Shawners said it. Get
Go out there and be terrible.
That should be a hashtag. I'm gonna actually hashtag that in the social media posts and also on the video as well.
Be terrible. Get messy.
Get out there.
We'll do that too.
That says everyone who's been winging it all along.
Yeah.
That's-
Make a mess of your life, Tiger.
All right, everyone. Well, so for the camera here, I'm gonna go and say thank you all again for giving the time and for really getting to know you all as individuals, because this is something I was looking forward to, and this was everything that I expected, and then something. I really do mean that. So again, thank you all very much for this opportunity, because this is something I'll never forget, because there's so much that I've learned from you guys, but there's so much that I think a lot of people can take away from this conversation that I hope will enlighten them and give them incentive to listen rather than making prejudgments before they get to know a person. So that's what I hope this will accomplish here too. All right. So for the camera, let's just sign off here and